When I found out my own son had blocked me on all social media 3 weeks before Christmas, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled, grabbed my phone, and called my lawyer. Within an hour, I had removed Jake from my will, and that was just the beginning of my revenge. Justice needs to be restored, and arrogance needs to be punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It was a Tuesday in December when I tried to message Jake about Christmas plans. The message wasn't delivered. I thought it was an internet problem. I tried Instagram. Profile not found. Facebook? Same thing. That's when it hit me. My 28-year-old son had blocked me on everything. I stood there in my kitchen, holding the phone like it was a bomb that had just exploded in my hand. 42 years raising that boy. 20 years as a single father after Sarah died of cancer. I paid for private college, a car, an apartment, his marriage to that viper Amanda. And now he was blocking me like I was a toxic ex-boyfriend. You think that was cruelty? Just wait. The story gets much worse. Because 3 days later I found out the reason for the block. And when you find out what Amanda did, you'll understand why I decided to destroy the perfect life they built with my money. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had always been a friend of the family. "Harold," she said in a heavy voice, "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but Jake and Amanda are spreading rumors around town that you're senile, that you've started having outbursts, sending strange messages, becoming obsessive about them." My blood ran cold. "They're saying you need psychiatric help. And Amanda is telling everyone that you decided to cut off contact to protect their family." It was there that I realized that love has an expiration date, and mine just expired. Let me tell you the truth that Jake and Amanda were hiding behind this lie that I was senile. The truth they didn't want anyone to know. For the past 2 years, since Amanda got pregnant, I had become their personal bank, and every dollar I lent them came with an extra dose of disrespect. It started when they needed a bigger house for the baby. The 2-bedroom apartment I had helped them buy didn't have room for a growing family. Amanda made a point of showing me on Pinterest exactly the kind of house she wanted. Upscale suburb, 3 bedrooms, garden, pool. "It's for your grandson, Harold. Don't you want him to grow up in a proper place?" $45,000 down payment. It came straight from my savings account, the same one I had saved for my retirement. "It's a loan, Dad. We'll pay it back in 2 years, Jake promised. Amanda smiled beside him, already calculating how she was going to decorate the room. Then came the need for new furniture. "We can't put the baby in a room with used furniture, Harold. It's not safe." Another $8,000. Then the new car because theirs didn't have the proper safety features for transporting a child. $22,000. Then the kitchen renovation because we needed space to make healthy food for the baby. $15,000. With each request, Jake's tone grew more distant. With each favor, Amanda treated me less like a father-in-law and more like an inconvenient obstacle she had to overcome to get what she wanted. But I did it all because I thought I was investing in my family, in my relationship with my son, in my grandson's future. What an idiot I was. They didn't see an investment. They saw a lonely old man, desperate to be a part of their lives, willing to pay any price to avoid being forgotten. And the more I paid, the less they respected me. The turning point was my grandson Tommy's first birthday in September. I had spent 3 weeks planning the party. I hired a clown, bought decorations, ordered a $200 custom cake, because after all, it was my grandson's first birthday, in the house that I helped buy, furnished with furniture that I paid for. I arrived at the house at 2 in the afternoon, as agreed, with the car full of gifts. The party was in full swing. There were at least 30 people in the yard. Family, friends, Jake's work colleagues. Everyone was well-dressed, everyone was smiling, everyone was celebrating my grandson, except me. Amanda greeted me at the door with a forced smile that barely reached her eyes. "Harold, it's so good you came. Listen, the party's a bit crowded. Why don't you leave the presents here at the entrance and—" She paused, looking over her shoulder as if checking if anyone was listening. "Maybe it's best if you don't stay too long. You know how it is, lots of people, lots of noise. And some of Jake's friends are, well, they're not used to." I waited for her to finish the sentence. She didn't. She didn't need to. I understood perfectly what she didn't have the courage to say. They weren't used to me. To the old widower who didn't know how to dress properly for fancy parties. To the guy who built his own company with his hands dirty with grease, not with an Ivy League degree. "Where's Jake?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Amanda nodded vaguely toward the backyard. "He's busy with important guests, people from his work. You understand? Important guests. As if I were an unimportant guest at my own grandson's party, in the house I helped pay for. That hurt in a way I didn't expect. That's when I realized that to them I was just a pocket. I went into the yard anyway. It was my family, after all. My grandson. My home, at least financially speaking. I saw Jake on the other side of the lawn, chatting animatedly with a group of men in suits. When he saw me, the smile faded from his face. He apologized to the group and came toward me with quick, angry steps. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "It's my grandson's birthday," I replied, confused. "You invited me." "Yes, but—" He looked around nervously. "Couldn't you have come later? Or earlier? Like drop off the gifts and leave?" That's when I snapped. "Jake, what are you talking about? I'm your father, he's my grandson. Why can't I stay at the party?" He sighed, as if I were a stubborn child who didn't understand adult rules. "Dad, look around. Do you see the kind of people who are here? They're colleagues from my work, Amanda's friends, important people. And you show up in flip-flops and a fishing shirt, talking loudly, telling stories about the workshop." I looked down. Flip-flops and a fishing shirt. It was true. I hadn't dressed up for a fancy party because nobody told me it was a fancy party. I thought it was a kid's birthday party in the backyard. "Are you kicking me out of my grandson's party because I don't like my outfit?" "It's not about the clothes, Dad. It's about fitting in, knowing how to behave." Amanda worked hard to organize this. She invited important people. "You can't just—" He paused, searching for the words. "You can't be yourself here." That phrase echoed in my head like a gunshot. You can't be yourself here. In the house I helped buy. At the party I helped pay for. I couldn't be myself. "So what do you want me to do, Jake?" He avoided my gaze. "Maybe you can come back later, when the party's over, to give Tommy his presents. Or maybe next weekend. We can do something small. Just the three of us. Something small. Just the three of us. Like leftovers. Like an obligation. Like a favor he was doing for the boring old man who paid for the whole party." I looked at the backyard full of people laughing and having fun. I looked at my grandson in Amanda's lap, wearing clothes I had bought, surrounded by toys I had given him. I looked at the 3-bedroom house, the pool, the landscaped garden, all paid for with my money, and I wasn't welcome. "All right," I said, surprisingly calm. "I understand perfectly." Jake seemed relieved. "Thank you for understanding, Dad. You know I love you, right? It's just not the day for today." I smiled at him, a smile he couldn't interpret. "Of course, son. Today isn't the day, but don't worry. My day will come." I left that party carrying the gifts I had bought for my grandson, leaving behind the illusion that I still had a family. On the way home, I stopped in a shopping mall parking lot and sat there in the car for an hour, trying to process what had happened. It was there that I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, I was going to start acting like one. If they thought my presence was an inconvenience, I was going to show them what was truly inconvenient. If they wanted important people in their lives, they were going to have to figure out how to get those important people without my money. The war had begun. They just didn't know it yet. In the 3 months that followed Tommy's birthday, I started paying attention to things that had previously gone unnoticed, and the more I observed, the more I realized that the humiliation at the party hadn't been an isolated incident. It was a pattern. Jake only called me when he needed money, and always with the same excuse. It was for the baby. "Dad, Tommy needs a new car seat. The pediatrician said the one we have isn't suitable for his age. $500. Tommy needs swimming lessons. It's important for his development. $200 a month. Tommy needs winter clothes. Last year's are too small. $300. But when I suggested visiting Tommy, there was always a reason to postpone it. "He's adjusting to daycare, Dad. It's not good to disrupt his routine." Or, "Amanda has a migraine. It's not a good day for visitors." Or the most creative, "Tommy is in the awkward phase. It's better to wait until he gets more used to different people." Different people. As if I were just some stranger, not the child's grandfather. That's when I decided to do something I'd never done before. Investigate where my money was really going. I hired a private investigator, Peter Kowalski, a former police officer specializing in family investigations. "Mr. Harold," he said to me at our first meeting, "are you sure you want to know the truth? Because sometimes the truth hurts more than a lie." 3 weeks later, Peter returned with a report that made my blood boil. Tommy's needs were a lie. The winter clothes that cost $300, Amanda had posted on Instagram wearing them to a fancy dinner with friends. The new car seat, Jake had sold it on Facebook Marketplace for $200 2 weeks after I bought it. The swimming lessons for the baby, they never happened. The money was used to pay the membership fee for the fancy gym where Amanda did Pilates. But the part that destroyed me the most was finding out what they were saying about me on social media. Peter had obtained screenshots of private conversations between Amanda and her friends, conversations I should never have seen, conversations that showed exactly what they thought of me. "Harold showed up here again today asking to see Tommy," Amanda had written to a friend. "Honestly, I don't know how Jake could stand growing up with that man. He's so basic. He talks loudly, has no filter, always with those stories from the workshop that nobody wants to hear. And the way he dresses, he looks like he stepped straight out of the 80s. The friend replied, "At least he has money, right?" Amanda: "Yeah, that's the only good thing about him. Jake says he's going to leave everything to us anyway, so we just have to put up with him until, well, you get the idea. For now, we'll just figure out how to keep him busy without letting him ruin our important events. Keep him busy. Put up with him. As if I were an inconvenient pet they needed to tolerate in order to receive the inheritance." But worse than that were Jake's posts. In a private Facebook group with his college friends, he had written, "Guys, I need an opinion. My dad is getting kind of obsessive since he became a grandfather. He shows up unannounced, wants to be involved in everything, gives his opinion on how we should raise Tommy. Amanda is getting stressed. How would you deal with a father who doesn't understand boundaries?" His friends responded exactly as he wanted to hear. "Cut the umbilical cord, man. You have your own family now. He needs to understand that he's no longer a priority." And then came the answer that made my world crumble. "Yes, you're right. I think it's time to create some distance, especially because Amanda is pregnant again, and we want a more peaceful environment for this pregnancy." Amanda was pregnant again. They were going to have another baby, and I had found out about it by reading a post on Facebook, not because my son had told me. That's when I understood their plan. The social media block wasn't impulsive. It was strategic. They wanted to gradually distance themselves from me, create a narrative that I was the problem, so that when the time came to cut me off completely, everyone would already be prepared to accept their version of the story. And the timing? Perfect. December. A time when families get together. A time when absences are noticed. If I simply disappeared at Christmas without explanation, who would question it? After all, everyone already knew that old Harold was becoming difficult, obsessive, ill-suited for social interaction. But I had an advantage they didn't know I had. I knew the truth, and I had proof. I called Peter on the Thursday before Christmas. "I need one more piece of information. Are they planning anything for the holidays?" "Funny you should ask," Peter said. "I intercepted a conversation between Jake and Amanda yesterday. They're organizing a Christmas dinner at the house. 22 people confirmed. Amanda's family, close friends, Jake's work colleagues. A big, well-planned party. And me? From what I understand, you weren't invited. In fact, I heard Amanda talking on the phone with her mother, who was relieved to finally have a peaceful Christmas without family drama." Family drama. I was the family drama. The man who paid for the house where they were going to celebrate Christmas was the drama they wanted to avoid. That night, I made a spreadsheet. I added up every penny I had given them over the past 2 years. House, furniture, car, clothes for Tommy, medical emergencies, investment opportunities Jake had presented to me, birthday presents, Christmas presents from the previous year. Total, $123,450. Over $100,000 to be treated as an inconvenience, to be called a family drama, to be blocked and excluded from the very family I helped support. It was time for them to find out what it meant to live without my money. On the Friday before Christmas, I woke up at 5 in the morning with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in months. I knew exactly what to do. The plan was simple, elegant, and devastating. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted: distance, boundaries. A peaceful Christmas without family drama. First stop, the bank. I canceled all automatic payments related to Jake and Amanda. The car loan that was in my name but they were using? Canceled. The private health insurance I paid for Tommy? Canceled. The joint account I kept for family emergencies? Closed. Second stop, notary's office. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, Robert Chen, for the Monday after Christmas. I want to change my will completely, I told his secretary. It's urgent. A third stop, home. I gathered all the evidence Peter had collected. Screenshots of conversations, photos of posts, records of all the payments I had made. I organized everything into a neat folder, because I knew that sooner or later, Jake would show up at my door wanting explanations, and when he did, I would be prepared. But the fourth stop was the most satisfying. I called my sister Carol, who lives in Denver, and accepted her invitation to spend Christmas at her house. An invitation I had refused for the past 2 years because I wanted to stay close to Jake and Tommy. Are you sure, Harold? She asked, surprised. I thought you always spent Christmas with Jake. Change of plans, I said. This year, I'm going to spend Christmas with people who really want my company. On Saturday morning, I packed my bags and drove to the airport, a 15-hour drive to Denver. But before leaving town, I made one last stop. I drove past Jake and Amanda's house, the house I helped them buy. I parked across the street and stood watching for a few minutes. The backyard was being decorated for the Christmas party. Expensive lights, a giant tree, professional decorations. Amanda was supervising 2 men who were setting up a heated tent. Jake was carrying cases of imported drinks. Everything perfect, everything elegant, everything paid for with my money. In 24 hours, they would discover that the party was over. Christmas at Carol's house was eye-opening. Not because it was spectacular. It was just normal. A normal family, celebrating normally, treating each other with basic respect and genuine affection. It was so different from the last 2 years that it made me realize how accustomed I had become to emotional crumbs. Carol noticed I was different. You seem lighter, Harold. More yourself. Because I finally stopped trying to be someone I'm not to please people who don't deserve me, I replied. On Christmas morning, my phone rang. Jake. The first time in 3 weeks he'd tried to contact me. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again to voicemail. On the third time, I answered. Dad? Dad, where are you? I tried to stop by your house and nobody's home. I'm in Denver, spending Christmas with Carol. Silence. Then, Denver? But you didn't tell me you were going to travel. You blocked me on all social media, Jake. How exactly was I supposed to let you know? More silence. I could hear voices in the background, murmurs, someone asking who was on the phone. Dad, about the block. It was only temporary. Amanda was worried about some strange messages you were sending and... What strange messages, Jake? Well, you were being kind of intense lately. Sending pictures of Tommy that you'd taken without permission. Showing up unannounced. Giving expensive gifts for no special occasion. Giving expensive gifts for no special occasion. As if generosity were a symptom of mental illness. As if grandfatherly love were suspicious behavior. I understand, I said, keeping my voice calm. And how's the Christmas party going? Did everyone important show up? Dad, it's not like that. Listen, when you get back, we'll talk. Maybe you can come here on the weekend, meet the guys, have a beer. Jake, I interrupted. Merry Christmas, son. And I hung up. On the Tuesday after Christmas, I was back home, organizing my emails when my phone rang. Amanda. First time in her life she had called me directly. Harold? Her voice sounded strange, tense. I need to talk to you about something. Sure, Amanda. What is it? The car payment didn't go through this month. The bank sent a notice saying the account was canceled. It must be some kind of system error, right? Could you call them and sort it out? I smiled, even knowing she couldn't see. It wasn't a mistake, Amanda. I canceled it. Silence. Then, canceled? Why? Because I'm tired of paying for cars for people who don't want me in their lives. Harold, this is ridiculous. Is it about the social media block? It was just a temporary precaution because you were being kind of obsessive. Obsessive, I repeated. Interesting choice of word. Tell me, Amanda, what exactly was obsessive about my behavior? Well, you were showing up here all the time, wanting to be with Tommy all the time, texting him constantly. You mean acting like a grandfather? Wanting to see my grandson? Keeping in touch with my family? That's not it, Harold. It's that you don't understand boundaries. Jake and I need space to raise our son our way. Ah, I understand boundaries perfectly, Amanda. That's why from now on, you'll have to raise your child your way with your own money. What? Harold, you're being dramatic. You can't just cancel everything because of a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I pulled out the folder with the evidence Peter had collected. Amanda, do you want me to read you your own messages about how basic I am, and you only put up with me for the money? Or would you prefer I quote Jake's post about how obsessive I am, and they need to create distance? Absolute silence on the other end of the line. That's right, I continued. I know everything, and now you'll have all the distance you wanted. For the next 2 weeks, my phone didn't stop ringing. First Amanda, then Jake, then the two of them together in conference calls that sounded more like police interrogations. Dad, you can't do this to us, Jake said. Amanda is pregnant. Tommy needs stability, and we have financial commitments that depend on your help. Financial commitments based on my help, I repeated. You mean you've built a lifestyle beyond your means by relying on my money indefinitely? That's not it, Dad. It's just that we've always seen you as a partner in our family, as an investor in our future. Partner, investor, anything but father and grandfather. And what was the return on my investment, Jake? Being blocked on social media? Being excluded from my grandson's birthday party? Being called the family drama you all wanted to avoid at Christmas? Who told you that? I didn't answer. I let the silence speak for me. It was Amanda who broke the silence. Harold, we made mistakes, okay? But that doesn't justify you cutting us off completely. Think about Tommy. Think about the baby that's coming. They need the stability you can offer. Stability, I said. You want me to provide financial stability for children whose father considers me a nuisance and whose mother calls me basic to her friends? How could you? We never said that. Amanda, my voice became dangerously calm. You forget that I built a company from scratch. To do that, I had to learn to separate lies from truth very quickly. And the truth is, you've always seen me as an ATM with inconvenient feelings. Jake tried one last tactic. Dad, if it's about money, we can formalize everything. Draw up a contract, establish interest rates, payment deadlines. It's not about money, son. It's about respect. And you've made it very clear that you don't respect me. In January, exactly 1 month after Christmas, Jake and Amanda received a letter from Robert Chen, my lawyer. A letter that would completely change the game. The letter was simple and direct. It informed me that I had amended my will and removed Jake as the primary beneficiary. In his place, I had established an educational fund for Tommy and his future brother or sister, administered by an independent trustee, with the condition that the parents would not have access to the funds until the children turned 18. In addition, the letter included a copy of all the payments I had made in the last 2 years, totaling nearly $150,000 when including the emergencies from December that I had discovered later. But the part that really destroyed them was the last paragraph. Mr. Harold Williams stipulated that any attempt to contest this shall result in the complete dissolution of the Children's Educational Fund, with all proceeds being directed to charity. Jake showed up at my door 3 hours after receiving the letter. He didn't knock. He didn't ring the doorbell. He pounded on the door like a desperate man. When I opened it, he was holding the letter in his hand. The paper crumpled as if he had tried to roll it into a ball and given up halfway through. Dad, this is insane. You can't do this. I can and I did, I replied calmly. Come in. Let's talk like adults. He walked into my office, the same office where we had watched football games when he was a teenager, where I had helped him with his homework, where we had talked about his first girlfriends. Now he was there like an angry stranger trying to reclaim money he considered rightfully his. Dad, I know we've made mistakes, but this will destroy our family. Jake, I said, sitting down in my favorite armchair, our family was destroyed the moment you decided I was an expensive inconvenience you had to tolerate. We never said that. I opened the folder containing the evidence and placed it on the coffee table between us. Would you like me to read your own words? Jake stared at the folder as if it were a venomous snake. His hands trembled as he realized what he was seeing. Screenshots of conversations, photos of posts, bank records, all organized chronologically like evidence in a courtroom. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is that now I know exactly what you think of me. And more importantly, I know that all of this was planned. The lockdown, the exclusion from Christmas, the narrative that I was becoming difficult. It was all part of a plan to gradually push me away. Jake collapsed onto the sofa, the letter still in his hand. For a moment he looked like the boy I had raised, frightened and lost. But then he looked up, and I saw something that chilled my blood. Anger. Not regret, not shame. Anger. Okay, Dad, you win. You found out that we didn't like the way you behaved, that Amanda found you embarrassing, that I was tired of you showing up unannounced and ruining our events. You want to hear that? There, you heard it. Finally. The raw truth, no masks, no excuses. Continue, I said. You were embarrassing, Dad. You'd show up at our parties talking loudly, telling stories nobody wanted to hear, dressing like you were going to a Sunday barbecue. Amanda's friends laughed at you at Tommy's birthday party. My co-workers asked me if you were all right in the head. You embarrassed us all. So you decided to cut me out of your lives. We decided to create boundaries. Everyone has the right to boundaries. And what about my money? Did it have boundaries too? Jake blushed. That's different. You offered help because you wanted to. Nobody forced you. I offered help because I thought I was helping my family. I didn't realize I was bankrolling my own self-imposed ostracism. We are family. No, I said, standing up and walking to the window. Family doesn't humiliate family. Family doesn't construct false narratives about mental health issues. Family doesn't block family on social media to hide a Christmas celebration. So that's it? You're going to cut us off completely? Because of your wounded pride? I turned to him. It's not about pride, Jake. It's about dignity. Jake remained silent for a few minutes, processing what he had just confessed. When he spoke again, his voice was different, lower, younger. Dad, we can change. We can do things differently. Amanda can apologize. We can include you more. Be more respectful. To recover the inheritance? No, to get our family back. Jake, let me ask you a simple question. If I had no money, if I were just a retiree living off Social Security, would you still want me in your lives? He tried to answer quickly, but his hesitation was all I needed to see. That's what I thought, I continued. You don't want a father and grandfather. You want a sponsor. That's not fair. You know what's not fair, Jake? It's not fair for a man to work 40 years to build something and find out that his own son only tolerates him for the money. It's not fair to raise a child alone after the mother died of cancer, sacrifice everything for her, and be treated like an embarrassment when she grows up. Jake started to cry. Real tears, not strategic tears. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I'm so sorry too, son. I'm so sorry it's come to this. I sat back down in the armchair and picked up the folder. But I'll give you one opportunity, one last chance to prove that you've truly changed. His eyes lit up with hope. I want you and Amanda to come here next Sunday for dinner. Just the three of you, her, and Tommy. No cell phones, no rush, no other commitments. I want an honest conversation about how we're going to rebuild this relationship based on mutual respect, not financial dependence. Okay, yes, we're coming. We're going to make it work, Dad. And Jake? If you guys come here and I realize it's just another performance to recoup the money, that'll be the last time we speak. Sunday arrived gray and cold, typical of January in Oregon. I prepared a simple dinner, pot roast, potatoes, vegetables, just the way Jake liked them when he was a child. Not because I wanted to impress him, but because I wanted to see if he still remembered the man who had raised him before Amanda reshaped his personality. They arrived promptly at 5. Amanda was visibly uncomfortable, carrying Tommy in her arms as if he were a shield. Jake seemed nervous, his eyes scanning the room as if it were his first time there. Sit down, I said, pointing to the kitchen table. The same table where Jake had done his homework, where we had talked about bullying at school, where I had explained that his mother wasn't coming back from the hospital. For the first 20 minutes, the conversation felt forced. Amanda praised the food with exaggerated enthusiasm. Jake talked about work with unnecessary detail. Tommy was used as a distraction whenever the silence became uncomfortable. Finally, I put my fork down on my plate and looked directly at Amanda. Amanda, you called me basic in a conversation with your friends. You said you only put up with me for the money, and that you're waiting for me to die to receive the inheritance. I want to hear from you, looking me in the eyes if you really think that. Her face turned white. Jake tried to intervene, but I raised my hand. Let her answer. Amanda looked at Jake, then at Tommy, then anywhere but me. Finally, her words came out in a whisper. I was frustrated. You showed up too much, wanted to control how we raised Tommy, gave your opinion on everything. That doesn't answer my question. Harold, I never meant to hurt you. Amanda, do you consider me basic? Do you only tolerate me because of the money? Tears began to stream down her face. Yes, she whispered. Sometimes. When you didn't understand that we wanted space. When you talked about the workshop in front of my friends. She paused, realizing what she was confessing. Jake was staring at her in horror. Amanda, at least she was honest, I said calmly. Now I want to hear from you, Jake. Jake was trembling. Literally trembling, as if he were cold. But I knew it was terror. Terror at having to choose between honesty and inheritance. Dad, this is complicated. It's not complicated, it's simple. Do you love me as a father, or do you only need me as an ATM? I love you. But, he paused, struggling with himself. But sometimes it's hard. You're so different from the people we hang out with now. Your friends, your upbringing, your way of seeing the world. It's from a different generation, a different world. And does that embarrass you? A tear rolled down his face. Yes, he whispered. Sometimes, yes. That word, yes, cut deeper than any insult. Because it was honest. It was real. It was what I'd always suspected but never wanted to accept. My own son was ashamed of me. Thank you for your honesty, I said, getting up from the table. Dad, wait. Just because I feel this way sometimes doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean I don't want you in my life. But it means you want me on your terms, when it's convenient, when I can behave in a way that doesn't cause embarrassment. That's not how it works. Jake, I walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the backyard where he had played as a child. Let me tell you a story. When you were 8 years old, you broke your arm falling off your bicycle. Do you remember? Of course I remember. Do you remember leaving work in the middle of the day, picking you up from the hospital, and staying up 3 nights because you were in pain? Do you remember learning how to make those dinosaur-shaped sandwiches because they were the only ones you could eat with the cast on? Jake was crying now. Dad, do you remember when the other parents arrived at school events in suits and I showed up in my workshop uniform because I didn't have time to change? You would still run to hug me? You were never embarrassed then. I was a child. Exactly. You were a child, and children love unconditionally, without judgment. But you grew up and learned to be ashamed of the man who raised you. Amanda broke the silence. Harold, we can change. We can learn to... No, I interrupted, turning to face them. You can't change who I am. And I'm not going to change who I am to fit into the perfect life you've built with my money. Jake stood up abruptly. So that's it? You're going to cut us off forever? No, Jake. I'm going to give you exactly what you've always wanted. The freedom to live your life without the embarrassment of having a basic father figure. Dad, please. I walked to my desk and picked up an envelope I had prepared. Inside were copies of all the New Testament documents. Tommy and the baby that's going to be born will have an educational background. They'll be able to go to any college, have any opportunity. But you two will have to figure out how to support the standard of living you've chosen with your own money. Amanda stood up too, holding Tommy tightly. Harold, this is going to ruin our lives. The house, the car, everything. Amanda, my voice hardened. You ruined our family. The house and the car are just consequences. Jake made one last desperate attempt. Dad, if it's about respect, we can learn. We can include you more, listen to your stories, accept your opinions on how to raise the children. Jake, you don't understand. I don't want you to tolerate me. I don't want you to pretend to like my stories. I don't want emotional charity from you. So what do you want? I want dignity. And dignity is not something you earn by asking. It's something you either have or you don't. I took Tommy from Amanda's lap for a moment. My grandson, the only pure part of this whole disaster. He smiled at me, unaware that this would probably be the last time we would see each other for a long time. You're going to be good parents to them, I said, handing Tommy back to Amanda. And when they grow up and ask why they don't know their grandfather, you'll have to explain that you chose money over family. That's not fair, Jake shouted. Life isn't fair, son. I learned that when my wife died of cancer at 35. You'll learn it differently. 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of my new house in Asheville, North Carolina. A smaller, simpler house, but mine. Completely mine. No mortgage, No debt, no toxic emotional attachments. My phone would ring occasionally. Jake trying to reconcile when bills got tight. Amanda sending pictures of Tommy with manipulative messages like he's asking about Grandpa. But I didn't answer. Not because I was cruel, but because I knew any response would be interpreted as an opening for further manipulation. I had learned the difference between forgiveness and being a fool. I forgave my son for his ingratitude. I forgave Amanda for seeing me as an expensive inconvenience. But forgiveness didn't mean going back to a relationship based on disrespect. I started consulting for small businesses, teaching other entrepreneurs how to avoid the mistakes I had made. Not just business mistakes, but life mistakes. How to identify when generosity becomes enablement. How to establish healthy boundaries, even with family. One of the lectures I gave was called The Price of Dignity. It was about a man who had confused buying love with building relationships, about how money can be the most fragile foundation possible for a family. It always ended with the same phrase: a family that humiliates you isn't a family. It's a corporation where you're the only investor and everyone else is a beneficiary. On weekends, I volunteered at a senior center. Men and women who, like me, had discovered late in life that raising ungrateful children was more common than they cared to admit. The difference was that most of them didn't have the resources to do anything about it. Harold, one of them, a former teacher named George, said to me, "Do you think you did the right thing?" "George," I replied, looking at the mountains I now called home. "For the first time in years, I can look in the mirror and respect the man I see." Today, 2 years later, I receive occasional updates about Jake and Amanda through mutual acquaintances. The house was foreclosed on. They had to move to a smaller apartment. Jake takes on extra jobs to pay the bills. Amanda went back to work after their second baby was born. I don't feel pity. I don't find pleasure in their difficulties. I feel peace. Because for the first time in my adult life, I am living according to my own values. I am not financing the lives of people who despise me. I am not accepting emotional crumbs in exchange for financial generosity. I am not pretending that love can be bought. The educational fund for Tommy and his sister still exists. When they turn 18, they'll have resources for higher education, travel, opportunities I never had. But Jake and Amanda will never see another penny from me. Some people tell me I was too harsh. That family is family, that I should have given more chances. But these people were never used the way I was used. Never had their generosity taken for granted, while being called basic behind their backs. The truth is this: respect cannot be bought. Dignity cannot be negotiated. And family that treats you like an embarrassing inconvenience while living off your money is not family. It's a subscription service you can cancel. If this story reminded you of someone, share it. If you've ever been used by family ungrateful people, write in the comments, dignity over dollars. Because sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is teach people the consequences of taking you for granted. And if you want to hear another story about family members who learned the hard way that generosity has limits, click on the next story. Because unfortunately, Jake and Amanda weren't the only ones who confused kindness with weakness. Remember, arrogancia has an expiration date. And when that date comes, justice tastes better than any family dinner you were never really welcome at anyway. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Some relationships aren't worth saving. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with your dignity intact. Dignity is priceless, but disrespect costs everything.